Andy, it's great to see you. First question is quite simple. How are you? How have things been since leaving Connors Quay?
Yeah, it's been a few weeks now. I've enjoyed the break. My son got married, so there was a lot of preparation around that. And I've just visited a lot of friends and family who I've not seen, been able to see, nephews, nieces, catching up with people in general. But being able to be with them when you're actually there, if that makes sense, rather than, because you're so occupied with football continually that you might be in somebody's company, but your mind's somewhere else. And it's just nice to, spend time with people and also be present.
Yeah, give us an idea of how time consuming is it when you're in the middle of it as a manager?
It's relentless. It's relentless and it's all in. And it's something I spoke about very often. It completely consumes your whole life from the minute you wake to the minute you go to bed. And even when you go to bed, you're still thinking about football. Such as the intensity and I believe such as the demands that are needed to be successful. It's not something that you can do, without your complete focus and attention to every small detail.
Was that, Andy, perhaps behind the reason for leaving Connors Quay? Did you get to the point where you were tired and you just wanted to get off the treadmill, if you like, for a bit?
I think so. Yeah, I think, listen, it can be said in many forms and looked at in many ways. But the facts of it are that it is relentless year after year after year. And we finish sort of mid-May and we're back June the 1st. And it's 2 weeks. But even in that 2 weeks, you're not away and you pinch a day here or there, or you get knocked out of Europe, you go away for a few days. But to actually step back from it completely is what I felt I needed at that time. And, and the last 2 or 3 weeks have shown me it was the right decision because, mentally and physically, it is very, very tiring. And I think you owe it to the football club, you owe it to your employees to make sure that, when you're in. And when you feel that maybe you can't, you're still present. And this is the key. You're still doing the same things. You're still going to games. You're still doing the same hours, but there's something missing. It's not the same intensity, and the same mindset is not the same, and the energy and the enthusiasm which everybody else. When you're relentless, it has to be consistent. It can't be, set up for one game and then different for another game, or you're going into a period. It has to be consistent. And I just felt towards, the end of last season and then towards the start of the season that I didn't feel exactly the same.
We thought end of last season, the amazing scenes of Penabont, we thought that might have been it. Were you close to leaving then?
When the reality was, it was genuine that I was thinking about, whether I could go and drive again. But the opportunity to manage in the Champions League and all the hard work that goes with that, and also very aware of not wanting to be embarrassed, and not wanting the club, because you've seen some of the results over the years, and wanting to lead the team into those games. And then maybe look at things after Europe. But the way it panned out, we had so many injuries. Good players who've been part of the squad left the squad and went to other teams. And it wasn't right. It wasn't right for me. We played Cawn Druids in the first game of the season. We had one sub and we had 9 players missing. And it wasn't the right time. And it just seemed to build from there. And it never seemed to be, this is the time to move on. And, after the Trefellen game, I felt the way the team played. I felt the energy in the changing room. I felt the build up in that week when we started to see players back. Danny Holmes, Aaron Edwards are coming back in. Declan Poole was back in. And, I made my decision on the Friday night before the Trefellen game that, I was going to finish regardless of the result. I knew the preparation was meticulous. I knew every detail was done. But before the results, we knew the result. I'd made the decision, and I wrote my email out to the chairman, but I didn't send it till after the game.
What was his reaction when you did send that email?
He was very understanding, and understood where I was coming from, and he made the process very simple and helped me in every way that he could.
Did it feel, Andy, perhaps a little bit underwhelming? Because, and don't take this the wrong way, when we heard the news that you were leaving, the thought of your last game at Connors Quay being against Trevelyan in the Cup seemed that, you know, we sort of always expected you to go out with a bang, go out on a high. Did it feel a little bit overwhelming? And that's no disrespect to Trevelyan, by the way, anyone who's listening. But we always imagined it would be, you know, lifting the cup or, you know, a big occasion.
No, it was the squad was back. Everybody was back. And the way we played that game, you know, we were very, very good. And I could see again the energy was coming back into the group. Good players that we'd be missing were back in. And, you know, that week following, I think everybody trained, you know, and that was the first time that season. So in the season, and that was important to me that, you know, now I can hand over and then somebody's not going into a situation where they have, you know, the key players are missing from the squad. So it felt the right time.
What was the reaction of the players when they found out you were off?
I met the players on the Thursday and on the Tuesday afterwards, and had a meeting with the players and explained that it was the situation and all that. It was an emotional moment for me. It was really tough, and you know, I felt strong going into the meeting. But then when you're looking back at and you're seeing the faces and the eyes that you've gone to war with them so many times, the players take the mick out of me whenever I use that word. War, you know, and when we've won cups and all that, they always put it in the changing room afterwards. What is it good for? That's blasted out, and they're all laughing. And but I find it difficult to come up with a word that describes each game and the intensity of a game, and what's needed in a game to win. And you know, and I look back at them faces, and you know, and it was really tough for me because the journey's been incredible, and the memories were you know, surpassed anything that we expected when I first went in.
I want to ask you about everything when you first joined and everything, and the success you had. But can I get this out of the way? Are you surprised when you look at the league table where they are right now, Connors Quay?
You have to be, yeah, of course. You know, it's the performances at the start of the season didn't really, you know, reflect the score lines because we dominated games, but we didn't score enough goals. Then we went into a period where it happens in football. We had back-to-back red cards against two good teams in Barry and Bala. And like I say, key players were missing. But, you know, I still believe there's plenty of time in, and I think it's only 4 points, you know, to get into that top six. And the top six is the key. People are talking about no playoffs, but, you know, that top six, those last 10 games, there's 10 playoff games. Because in the past, teams have strategically placed themselves in relation to games, in relation to suspensions for the playoffs, and they tend to drift away a little bit from the importance of a game with one eye on the playoffs. And now there isn't, because whether you're sixth or you're second, you know, you have to get into that top two or possibly three if one of the winners of the cup team. So the playoffs, the key is getting into that top six. When you get into that top six, you've got 10 games and everything's in your hands then to go and get second or third.
Can we take you back to the beginning then with Connors Quay? When you walked in the D-side stadium, they were fighting relegation. You were staring at a relegation battle. You took them to Europe. You won the Welsh Cup, you won the League Cup, you won the league. Amazing. You know, that first day, could you have imagined what was ahead of you?
No, certainly not. You know, I am a dreamer. I always have been.
You're not the only one, that somebody said once.
Exactly. And it's, you know, it was really about getting the trust of the players and asking them to believe in me and asking for them to give me a chance. You know, a new manager comes in and, you know, it's, I certainly had no ego, you know, but I believe that, you know, I could win games of football, and I asked the players to trust me and give me a chance, and I'll show you. And, you know, the results came along with that. And, you know, and the best way to sell yourself is to win games of football. Players, you know, staff, owners will believe in what you're doing. And we did. And we started and we went on a great run. And, you know, we got into the top six on the last game of that before the split by beating TNS 2-0, you know. So again, that gave us great belief going into that top six, and obviously the playoffs. And it felt like that as the season went on, everything was geared towards an Airbus Connah's Quay final, which came along, and it was an incredible journey.
I know it's probably a very long list, Andy, but what are the moments that you look back on and you think, God, that was special, and sort of wish? Are there any days that you wish you could relive, perhaps?
The from a CV, obviously, toppling TNS, monopolised the league for 8 seasons, dominated in every area. So from my CV, obviously doing that, but for me personally, it is the Airbus game, because I know what it meant to me at the time. And I know when I partied from Airbus and the way things were, and going into that game, it meant so much to me. And when you look back over the victories and the cup wins and the league titles, there's a moment there where it's adrenaline driven and it's euphoric, but it's the following day that you appreciate things that you've done. And we played it. We obviously beat Airbus, and I drove home and I had Top of the World by the Carpenters on repeat just all the way home for an hour. And it was, and I was with my family, and the following day I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning with adrenaline, and I went for a walk, and I sat down by the river. And it's them moments that are key, when you sit down and you actually reflect on what you've achieved, and it was really special. You then go back in, but like I say, after a game, the emotions, the adrenaline, everything is firing all over the place. You don't capture the moment. It's always afterwards that you reflect and go, wow, that's some achievement we've just done there, and that really encompasses everything about the success.
You mentioned the new Saints, TNS. They've had a few different names over the years, but they've been so successful. There was a stage where none of us, with Sgorio and people watching the league, thought it would anybody could challenge them. When did you start thinking, we've got something here, we can take them on, so to speak? They
were so strong and so far ahead. When we went to Airbus and we played them for the first time, playing a brand of football that was, it was new to me, and it was the Welsh way, at that period, and it followed on from what was going on at Swansea and the Welsh national team, and they were so good. And we played against them on I think it was a Tuesday night, and I went home. I was at Airbus, and I went home and it was a tactics board, and I sat for about 3 hours that night looking at every way and the overloads they created and how we could stop them, or at least try and be in games. And for hours and hours I looked at it, and it basically came down to the fact that they were so far ahead, technically, tactically, and it was the only way we could get near them was to just literally suffocate space and try and stay in the game, because they were so good. As time went on, and I always wanted to be able to go toe to toe with them and see how good they were, with the personnel. And you have to have qualities. In the last couple of seasons, we've managed, and I think it gets overlooked a little bit. In the last 3 seasons, the team that's dominated possession of the ball, it's been TNS. Second to that, it's been Connah's Quay. Now, people might think, it's Barry or it's Pennybont or Newtown. It's Connah's Quay, and we've evolved over a period of time, and and we were able in the last couple of seasons to still not be on a par with them, but we had the personnel to challenge them and be able to attack what their weaknesses were. And to attack what their weaknesses were, you have to leave yourself vulnerable in one-on-one situations, but we had the personnel to do it. In Chris Owens, Danny Holmes, Priestley Farquharson, Danny Davis, we could leave one-on-ones and get 2 up against them, and we did. And we, even when we, the season that we won it, when it was cut short with COVID, we dominated them at Park Hall, but we didn't get the results. So I knew we were getting closer all the time. And that's down to personnel, and that's down to growth, and it takes a period of time. Obviously it takes investment, and you need to fall on good players, and we did, and we were able to go toe to toe with them. But at the start, when we go back to when I first came across them at Airbus, they were a million miles ahead of everyone. And of course, then Craig Harrison went in there and with his drive, his determination, his focus, his obsession with football and winning, they went to another level again. And from there, we managed to get there eventually. And it was a lot of hard work to be able to get anywhere near them.
You mentioned going toe-to-toe with them. So how special was last season when Mike Wilde took them apart? If you don't mind me saying, at Park Hall, that must have been, I know
that was an amazing
it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable to watch. We were all gobsmacked. We shouldn't have been, but how special was that day for you in the league, that league win?
It was, we played ever so well there earlier in the season and didn't get what we deserved. And like I say, we found a way to utilise Wildy. It's an hour with a tactics board, actually going through the detail that went into those games, and that game especially, and the way we managed to utilise Wildy coming from a deeper position and pushing the centre-halves back with two strikers. There's so much detail that went into that game, but you need the personnel, you needed the timing, and you needed a little bit of good fortune on the day. And it did. The qualities of the balls that were put into Mike, that was his strength. We were able to target from early in the season, where we managed to get down the side of centre halves, and we put great balls into the box, and everything that we had planned, where we had played very well in the week in games before that, and it didn't pay off. It came on that day, and and it was fantastic.
I wanted to ask you about Mike Wilde, Andy, because I really liked your tweet when he left, and you said any player is welcome to come around to mine for a Sunday roast, but only a select few are welcome to come and have Christmas dinner with me. And you said that Mike Wilde was one of those players. What have you made, since he's moved to Flint? They're obviously flying high. Nobody expected them to be, sitting second in the table. What have you made of his performances there?
Yeah, he's Mike's was fantastic for me, and and there is, and it's a joke, and of course that carried on into the changing room, and all the lads are asking, am I in the Christmas club or am I just in the Christmas? And it was, Mike Wilde is unique, and there's a few players in the league who are unique in their talents, and their talents could play at the very top. Paul Harrison at TNS is unique in his ability to play football and what he actually brings to their team. And what he does, he could do that in the Premier League. George Horan, his aerial ability is that of a Premier League player. Michael Wilde, his understanding, his perception of space and time, his arrival in the box is off the highest standard. And you can always tactically find ways to nullify players and try and stop them. But when they're that good at their area, you can't. You can't get the press right on Paul Harrison. He's that good. You can't stop Wildy with his timing and his arrival in the box. George Horan the same. And there was other players over the years that I've seen that have the ability to play at the very highest level. And Wildy, his mental strength, I saw it as time went on, just how mentally strong he was, his determination, his focus, and it's selfish as well. A striker has to be selfish. Michael was selfish in the way he did things, but he was a team player, and it was. I was so fortunate to have him in the time that I got him, and then he's grown from there, and he's carried on again this season. And there's nothing I can say about Wildy that nobody else has already said.
The other side of that, I've got to ask you again: how disappointed he then that he wasn't with Connors Key, that the champions couldn't hold on to somebody like Mike Wilde or even strengthen from that position? Yeah,
absolutely. But like I say, to be a striker and score goals, there has to be a selfish element to what you do. And when Michael had an incredible journey with us at Connors Key, and an opportunity came. And, not just about this season, in a coaching capacity going forward. And obviously, with the offer of a 3-year deal, at that age. Mike got a 2-year deal at 33 when he came to us. So you get to 38, near 39, and you get a 3-year deal. I think that's testament really to how well you've done over that period. And also, the progression into coaching as time goes on, and that opportunity came up for it. And I never even tried to sway him to come back or persuade him to rethink it. When a player's made his mind up, like Wildy done, and it was time to move on, then it was, and I wished him all the best, and I thanked him for what he did. And at the start of the season, and it's really important, at the start of the season, Flint got off to a good start, but the awards and the trophies and the accolades are given at the end of the season, not at the start of the season. And it's a season of hard work. And we'll see where things are at the end of the season, and then that will reflect whether the decisions were right or wrong.
I'm intrigued, Andy, to get, now that you've stepped away and you can sort of say what you want to say, I'm intrigued to get your thoughts on the league and where you think the game is at in Wales. What's its strengths, what's its weaknesses? You've touched on, losing the European place. Now that you've been removed from the picture for now, at least, where's your assessment of where we're at?
Well, first of all, thank you for asking, because you would think that the back-to-back manager who's won the title of back-to-back seasons, back-to-back manager of the season, the progression from part-time to full-time, 6 back-to-back European campaigns, 9 back-to-back, went 3 as a coach at Airbus, and also the progression from part-time to full-time. You would think that people would be interested in what he thought. So
I want to know.
Thank you very much for asking. It's the league has gone from strength to strength. It really has. I think everything outside of actually what's on the pitch has improved. But I think if you go back to the Llanelli teams, the Neath teams, the Bangor, the TNS, I think there were some really strong teams back maybe 10 years ago. But everything else, the infrastructure that's in place has definitely strengthened the quality of the managers. And, the vision is stronger and the expectations are much higher now than what they were. But it's still, we're still coming up short. So there's still areas that have to be improved. And for me, obviously, there's talk of summer football. There's going to be a massive increase in the women's side of football and all that, but it has to be accompanied with whatever ideas come along over the next few months. It must also be matched along with financial backing and help for the football clubs in a financial way. Whatever's said and done, it must be that and financial backing, because we're way down, and it's if you take Gary Dewhurst and Mr. Ackroyd and Mr. Harris, you take them out of the equation, then what are you actually left with? When teams from tier 7 and tier 8 in England are taking our best players, and that can't be right. There's something wrong there, and it's not. It's none of my business what other clubs pay players, but I am privy to certain things. And when you go into a European campaign, and you're coming up against the strength and the power of other countries, and that players are earning a couple of £100, and then players from 8th tier in England are paying them more. That cannot be right. So investment is on the financial side. It has to be strengthened as we go on.
Yeah, it is interesting. As you mentioned, that there are some clubs, just Connah's Quay, Bala, Saints, they've been lucky to have good people behind them backing those clubs. I guess it's stuff like, some clubs, even when you try, it's, Wales, the infrastructure, the roads aren't great. How hard is it for a club if you haven't got that backing just to travel, to get a bus, even getting a hotel? I take it even staying in a hotel is probably a luxury for some clubs.
Yeah, it is. And again, it's the facts of where we are. And, we played Al-Sharat from Armenia, the Armenian champions, and had a conversation through a translator after the game with the manager. And he was very open and honest, and he spoke to me about, their playing budget. And it was 5 times what Connah's Quay's playing budget is. Now, at the end of the conversation, he said, the problem I've got now is that we go and play Sheriff Tiraspol in the next round. He says, their budget's 5 times what ours is. And it goes on and on. And then as as it goes through, I mean, Sheriff Transport, we were 5 minutes from some penalties against Al-Scarat, and we would have played Sheriff, who just beat Real Madrid. So the gulf is massive. And sometimes it gets lost, and we all go into it, and we do our due diligence work and there's enthusiasm. But the gulf is so huge that the teams we're going up against, we have no right to even compete against them. But we find a way to stay in games and try and win. But the gulf is huge. And I remember Mike Harris a couple of seasons ago when they played, I think it was Red Star, is it Lincoln Imps from Gibraltar?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
It was supposed to be just to give me a win. And they did win TNS. And Mike said afterwards, their budget is twice what TNS budget is, a team from Gibraltar. So again, I think at the pecking order, we're right down the very bottom in what we're able to pay players. And that has to come from, for me, whether from the government, local councils, the FA, the clubs have to get help to be able to attract, because there are so many good players around in the Conference North, Conference South, and there's really good players, and it's just the next level above what we're able to pay. TNS have invested in the summer, and they've had to go to the next level to bring in the quality of players that they feel to need the league to win the league, and then go on and compete in the Champions League. And so, like I say, whatever ideas come up to bring the league forward, it must also be accompanied with investment.
That's interesting. There's a new chief exec, Mr. Mooney. We'll give him a chance to see what comes. What you said there is interesting with the Conference North, Conference South. We're always comparing what level are the Welsh clubs at, but budget-wise, so you're saying the Cymru Prem is below, or even what players in, I don't want figures obviously, but Conference South, will players be earning more in that sort of league? Conference
South and the Conference North are on another level compared to the Welsh Premier League.
Gosh.
People may not want to hear that, but, like I say, Chris Hughes lost 3 players at the end of the season, and 2 of them very good players went to Stafford Rangers. Why Stafford Rangers are able to pay more than the Welsh Premier League, it's not right. And the clubs are battling against that. Anyone can come and cherry pick the best players in the Welsh League. And it's very difficult, like I say, for managers to keep them players. We had players that Prescott Cables, Bamber Bridge are offering, better money than what teams in the Welsh Premier League are able to pay. A few players went to Flint from Warrington, and Flint weren't able to pay the wages that Warrington were paying. And that cannot be right. It has to be addressed and looked at as time goes on.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Can I just add, you've mentioned Mike Harris a few times. We've loved your... I don't like the word banter, but I can't think of another word to use at the minute. Andy, you've had some good times up against Mike Harris over the last few seasons.
Yeah. Mike has... drove me forward in many ways, with challenging and, we'll call it banter along the way. But, Mike sent me a text message when I left, and Mike rang me, and, and what he said, I was really pleased and very proud of what he actually said I brought to the league. And it is football. You're always looking for any angle whatsoever to get an advantage over somebody. And, we've had great banter over the years in many ways. Sometimes it's been really close to the line, but that's football. I want to do the best for Connah's Quay and win games of football. Mike wants the best for TNS, and he wants his team to be successful. And, we've exchanged emails and we've exchanged stuff over the years, where we've challenged but at the end of the day, when I left, like I say, I got a lovely message from him, and that meant a lot.
You've mentioned, Andy, I guess the rivalry between Connah's Quay and TNS, and how hard you guys work to finally sort of steal their crown for a couple of seasons. But I'm wondering, again, stepping back, you've mentioned the standard of the managers has progressed, and the standard of play. Are there any teams or any managers in the league that you genuinely think, gosh, they've got a bright future ahead of them? Or who are the teams that you enjoyed playing against because they'd always give you a good challenge?
It's anything I say when I agreed to speak to you today, I was mindful of not wanting to put any pressure on anyone and not be disrespectful in any way to anyone. Because if you have an opinion, then there's always two sides, and somebody will like it, somebody won't. And there are some exceptionally good managers in this league, and I believe that if they had the same budget as TNS and if they were full time, I believe they would challenge and could go beyond. That's not how it is, but there are. I've always had a great relationship with managers. Yes, it's competitive. Yes, we don't exchange Christmas cards, but there's always an underlying respect because we're all trying to win, and I get that. And when I see, I've got a lot of time for Rhys Griffiths, and I've spoke many times before about my respect for what he's done at Penybont, but also his understanding of the game and how he's evolved. And for me, a good manager finds a way to win with the group of players he has. And if you have the best group of players in a league, then there's a certain way to play football, which will create the best opportunities to score and will nullify the opposition's opportunities to score against you. It's the way you should play. But if you haven't, you have to find a way to win games of football. And when Penybont first came up, the whole season before, they were unbeaten, and they played a way of football that was dominating the ball. And when they came into the Welsh Prem, they realised after a few games they can't do that anymore. And I've watched the way they've evolved over the last couple of seasons, and it's, like I say, nobody needs me to pass comments on about, but I've been really impressed with the way Rhys Griffiths has adapted his team, and it's evolved now to a team that we haven't now got the best of. Because when Penybont first came in and they tried to play a certain way and play out, the detail from the other managers, the Instat, the Vimeo, the highlight we get, the press will be correct against them. Plus, it's athletes that are pressing against them, and then they were without a Rhys Griffiths to go to, so they had to try and find another way. And like I say, the way they last season and the way they're kicking on again now. Chris Hughes at Newtown always finds a way to win games of football again. Has worked out, that there is a way to play. And if I go off at a bit of a tangent on that, Thomas Tuchel, if he's playing against Manchester City, he plays different to the way he plays against Tottenham Hotspur. It's a good manager. We all want to play a certain way, and I'd like to think people see how Connah's Quay have evolved over the seasons and the way we play now, because it was pointed out to me last week when I spoke to somebody, just with the knowledge and understanding of the game, if you haven't evolved over 6 years and you're playing the same way you did when you first come to the club, then teams should have worked you out, but they never worked us out, and sometimes, it helped us in many ways because teams spoke and still speak about the way Connah's Quay, we know what they do, we know what their strengths are. And sometimes, that helped us, and we didn't get the credit we deserved for that, and I had to smile because I spoke with a manager who I played with, and this was a few seasons back, and I said how frustrated I was at the lack of acknowledgement that the club got for the way we did things, and the players never got the respect they deserved. It was always back to, they just go back to front, long throw in, blah, blah, blah. And the manager said, you'll spend, and this is a manager who's managed at the very, very top of the game, and he said, you'll spend your whole life trying to prove people wrong. He said, it's much easier to prove that you're right. And I think we went on and proved that we were right. Because as time has gone on, we've definitely changed in the way we played football and the way we dominated the ball. But I had to smile right at the end, even in my last game against Trefellyn. We had 73% possession. We had 50 entries into their box. They had 1 in 2 hours. We totally dominated the ball in every area. And the manager after the game in his interview said, we're not used to direct football and physicality. I just smiled and just thought, you know what, you'll just have to live with it, because that's what's brought you success to a degree. But people don't actually see how we evolved over the years.
I'd love to ask you about your career as well before we say goodbye. Before saying goodbye, are we going to say hello again? By the way, because we miss you in the league. Will you come back at one point, maybe, Andy?
I'm going to be back very, very soon because the royalty that is Mark Jones has asked me to accompany him in a game. So
Yay!
I think it's the Newtown TNS game. So and when royalty asks you can't turn it down. So I'll be there in a few weeks to do co-commentary with Mark. So I'm looking forward to that.
What about
We're looking forward to having you as a part of the team,
we
Andy.
are. That's brilliant. That's good news for us. But what about, I meant in a different capacity, if you don't mind me saying, in the managerial role. Is that, I know it's early, but would you consider coming back sometime?
I'm looking forward to going out and watching games and Welsh games, and I'll just see where that goes. Like I say, at the moment in time, I was offered 2 jobs in my first week that I finished. When I finished at Connasky, and it was impossible. It's impossible for me, and I'll know when the time's right. I'll know when the energy's there. I know when the focus is there. I know when the intensity's there. I know when I'm ready to go. And at the minute, I'm enjoying this break. Brilliant.
I'd just like to ask about your influences, because there's that famous sign up in Connasky. I'm going to have to get the quote right. Winning isn't everything. Wanting to win is everything. I think I may have misquoted it, but it sums you up, if you don't mind me saying. Where did that come for you? Who instilled that winning mentality into you as a young player?
It's I think probably my father. My father was very, very demanding, and I always played that way. Even when I was young, I don't know whether it's nature or nurture. I don't know whether you're born that way, but when I go back to sort of Plymouth schoolboys, Devon schoolboys, I was always the captain of the team, and I always wanted to win, and I always had a competitive edge. And I think that's something that's in you. It obviously stands out a lot more because of the way I look and the way I carry myself. But I think there's an element of that in every manager. Everybody wants to win. And, and it's like I say, probably my father was the person who pushed me the hardest. And I went to Southampton as a kid, and I was there for 3 days. My dad came up, and he took time off work, and we weren't in a financial position, and it didn't work out. And I remember I was driving home on the way home, and I could tell he was furious that I hadn't done enough there, and we got back towards Plymouth, and my dad said to me, he said, nobody remembers that you were even there. He said, you didn't leave an impression in any way. And it never left me. I was sort of 12, 13. And he said, wherever you go, you must leave an impression. He says, ideally, it's the right impression, but the wrong impression is better than no impression. And it's something I've always remembered. And and I like to think every club I played for and every club I've managed, I've left an impression. And like I say, ideally, you want it to be a good impression, but make sure people know you've been in town. And that's what Connasky always did. When we went to Helsinki and we went to Partizan and Norway, everybody knew we were in town. And that's what I always said to the players. When we leave here today, make sure that these people know you. We're not going to get Christmas cards of anyone, that's for sure. I see the relationships with other clubs, and they play, and and then they're wishing them all the best in the next round. And I'm like, nobody wants to see us again when we've been in town. And that's what we brought, and that's who we were. And yeah, it's great, a pat on the back, lovely, because the only time people speak nicely about you and thank you and all that's when they've beat you. Nobody's very, very pleasant when you've beat them.
Couple of things. First of all, that explains a lot, Andy, about you as a person, the story you just said about your dad. And second of all, there's a bit of a Christmas theme going on here, even though it's only October, but I'm not complaining. You've also played under people like Kenny Dalglish, Sam Allardyce. Have they impacted you in any way, sort of, now that you're managing yourself? Are there any lessons that you learned from them that you incorporate into your daily life?
I think you have to. I think you've got to be alert and aware and look at the certain qualities that, Sam Allardyce, Kevin Keegan, Kenny Dalglish, Brian Horton, Joe Royle, Peter Shilton in my younger days. And they all bring something to you. But, it's really important that you're true to yourself. And if you get the sack, then make sure if Andy Morrison gets sacked, make sure it's Andy Morrison that's getting sacked, not Andy Morrison trying to be somebody else or trying to act in a way that he's not been true to himself. And that's important to me, and And like I say, I've been fortunate to play for so many managers and see the quality, the depth of the analysis of Sam Allardyce, the way Joe Royal managed people, the aura that Dalglish had. Again, Kevin Keegan, the way he dealt with players, and you just wanted to play for him. And why? What were the reasons? I went on loan for 2 months with Neil Warnock, and I got him in 2 months. I understood where the success came from. And there were so many qualities he had that went away. Yes, he's completely as barking mad as me. I got why he won, and I understood. And I remember leaving there thinking there's so many good things that he did and said, and the way he managed, and all those little things. Of course, you have to take them, but you have to be true to yourself and be who you are. I think I am. That's
interesting. Just occurred to me now. You mentioned Neil Warnock, Cardiff City, of course. Mick McCarthy's just left Cardiff City. They're all talking. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's under intense pressure at Manchester United. They're saying something needs to change. We're not developing, especially a club like Cardiff. They're saying we need to rip it up. We're not playing the brand of football. Judge, the clubs get lost sometimes. I'm not comparing it to Connah's Quay, but they were lost. You came in and changed it. So the clubs need to change. Do they get lost and they need somebody to rip it up and start again, so to speak?
Yeah, I think you've obviously got fans from different generations, and I remember when West Ham were talking about the West Ham way, when Sam went in there, no, we want the West Ham way. Football has moved on. Football's moved on so much since from when I played. In the last 10 years, football's moved on again. And Manchester United talking about the Manchester United way of playing football, it's a million miles away. It's 4-4-2 the way United played, with Beckham and Giggs and two men in midfield and the football has changed, but fans don't really see that, and they keep talking about this. We want to be entertained. Fans will be entertained when they win, and whichever way that win comes, fans go home happy. And sometimes with social media now and just the relentlessness of radio interview, and people and fans have got so much say now that it puts pressure on owners. And I think the key has to be the strength of the owners to be able to stay with, because if they're making a decision based on what fans want, and I go across to Wrexham, with that, which is another Welsh team just down the road from me. And, if you have got a club the size of that and you have a couple of seasons where you stay in the league you're in, then that can happen. If it's 5 years, there's something wrong. If you get towards 10, 11 years, then it's negligent somewhere along the line, because decisions are being made on not what's to win games of football, but to keep people happy. And the strength, I believe the strength of the owners are. And like I said many times, my gratitude to Gary for giving me the opportunity, because if Gary had made phone calls to people, who had never worked with me, who didn't know me, they would probably said, be careful there. If Gary had rang anyone who had worked with me, they'd say, give him the job. And that was the same as a player. Joe Royal, when I went to Manchester City, if he had rang people who had never worked with me, they would have said, stay away from him. Don't get involved. If they had rang anyone, thankfully they did ring Les Chapman, who worked with me. If they rang anyone who worked with me, they would say, sign him. You've got to get him. So it's the strength of the owners play a huge part as well.
Andy, we're keen to know, you strike me as the type of person that thinks you shouldn't have any regrets in life, but looking back on your careers as a player and a manager, are there any regrets at all?
Yes, there has to be. When I look back and I managed to get to and play for two Premier League teams, and I got to one, Blackburn. I played in the Premier League when I was 23, and then later when I was 29. But that period in between, I look at it from two ways. The mountains that I climbed and the hurdles I overcome to actually play football, are remarkable. With the qualities I had and the talent that I had, I totally underachieved. So always trying to balance up them two and not be too hard on myself, and also not be, too egotistical, because, like I say, there's so many things made life difficult for me when I was younger, and I had to overcome so many, issues that I've spoke about openly in my autobiography, and I'm never shy, to talk about those, because I always hope it helps somebody else. I had my last drink of alcohol on the 2nd of February 99. I'm 23 years this year since I had a drink. And if I had stopped drinking when I was 23, I would have played for my country. I would have probably had 100 games, 100 games in the Premier League. And, I'd probably be in Barbados now. And I wouldn't be speaking to you on this chat. But it's life, and like I say, in many ways, I overachieved massively. But in other ways, I came up so short in so many areas.
I wanted to ask you about that actually, because Joe Ryle, as we've talked about, he said once that you should have won at least 50 caps for Scotland. But unfortunately, like you've touched, personal circumstances got in the way. Is the international football, is that something that sort of, still feels, a bit disappointing?
Oh, it's more, Sean. It's more than disappointing. Just one cap that I could have took and give to my granddad, and just showed him. One cap. That's all I ever dreamt. I wanted to be a professional footballer. And when I made my debut for Plymouth at 17 at Aston Villa, after that I felt I achieved something. It was always, just play for Scotland once, and it wasn't to be. I got close on a few occasions, and it's a hard luck story. And I hate hard luck stories. I hate anyone. Oh, I could have been. It was this injury. Blah blah blah. Your life is your life. It's your path. And but the Scotland thing was huge for me. Because this. The only thing I can blame my father for in life is robbing me of my accent. I've got a cider West Country accent, and I left Scotland when I was 10. When my accent disappeared, and for a proud Scotsman and somebody as patriotic as I am, it's quite hard to try and sell it that I'm a thoroughbred Scotsman with a West Country accent.
Oh, we mentioned, obviously, we focus so much on Man City in your career, and Blackburn, obviously, because where they were at the time as well. But what about Blackpool? You left quite an impression there, because you weren't there that long, but you still made it into the Hall of Fame. How did you do that?
It's a great question. Sometimes fans just react to people when they can relate to them, and they see, every fan wants to have played for the club. And when they see somebody play who just leaves nothing behind, every game is a cup final. And I trained the same way, and I played the same way. And it was interesting that that when I speak to people from them times, and they'll say, like, God, we didn't want to be in your team in training. Nobody wanted, you were just relentless. You just never stopped moaning. You wanted to win everything. And I think fans see that and they relate to it. And I don't know what it was, 60 odd games I played, but when you're alongside Stanley Matthews in the Hall of Fame, you must have done something right. And going back to, again, what we spoke about earlier, make sure you leave an impression, when you've been somewhere. And I was in the Huddersfield team of the decade in the 90s when I was there, so always left an impression. And it was based purely around the need to win and the need to just be the best you can be at every moment, no days off. And again, I think we installed that in Connaskey, those qualities. There's no days off. When you're playing Guilsfield in the Cup, the preparation is meticulous, and the detail, the intensity is the same as you're playing TNS the following week. And it has to be like that.
Just finally, Andy, the picture of you and Liam Gallagher at the Etihad. Who wanted the picture? Was it you or Liam?
Well, it wasn't at Etihad. Liam, that was in the Champions League final.
Champions League final,
Yes,
yeah.
And I was sat next to Liam, and it was me. I asked him. I have to be honest. I asked him for a picture, but it's nice when he actually knew who you are, and yes, it was nice. And I've met Nolan a couple of occasions, and I said when I spoke to Nolan, I'm a massive, as you'll know, I'm a massive music man. And I love my music, and I just wanted to talk to him about music, and he just wanted to talk football. and he's and Noel speaking about the '99 Cup final and asking about that, and you're just thinking football is an incredible way of bringing people together, and it was nice, and and they're both very, very pleasant men.
Glad you mentioned Man City. We're going to wrap it up, but thanks for your time. But I've got to ask you, I've got a friend who's a die-hard City fan. He's nearly 50 now, so that tells you he's been long suffering, but now he's the happiest guy in the world, nearly. Your role with the club, your current role as well. How special is your relationship with Manchester City Football Club, Andy?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. And again, I never lose sight, Dylan, of the importance of good fortune and timing in life. It's huge. It's huge. The timing that I went into Connah's Quay was perfect. There's so many good things in place. Exactly the same at Manchester City. So many good things in place. And then I came along and was a piece of the jigsaw, the same as I was a small piece of the jigsaw at Connah's Quay that was needed at that time. But there was good coaches. There was an ambitious owner. There was good players. There were so many good things in place. And that element of luck plays a huge part in football. I stood on the touchline at Kilmarnock. My preparation was meticulous, every detail. And in the first 15 minutes, they missed 3 open goals. The keeper pulled off 3 unbelievable saves. And then we had 2 opportunities. We scored 2 goals. And, 2 weeks later, or it might have been before that my preparation was meticulous against TNS in the cup final. Every detail was covered. And we're 3-0 down. And it's, football pans off in different directions. All you're responsible for is making sure that you're ready for every game. And we did. And Manchester City, my timing was perfect. Connah's Quay was perfect. And one of the questions that you did ask, which I had to know, you talked about my 5-a-side team. My favourite football way.
You can ask that right at the end. Perfect. You stole the question from us. This is always a good question.
It is, and my team is basically based purely around name dropping. It's got nothing it's got nothing to do with the quality of the best players. I just want to drop in some names.
I don't blame you. We played with Dalglish and Keegan and Joe Royal. I think you're allowed to name drop, Andy.
Exactly, and so my team are Shearer, to start with, Alan Shearer, and played with him. David Batty, who never got the credit he deserved for just how good a player he was. Now, I only played with this player on 2 occasions, so I don't really know how good he was, but I'm going to drop him in. Kenchelskis, I played with him. And then George, I don't know if you remember George Weah.
I think we remember him, yeah.
Yeah, George Weah. And finally, if I was putting a goalkeeper in, I've got to put Peter Shilton in. Because I played with him at Plymouth.
Wow.
So it's a terrific 5-a-side team based purely on me name dropping.
I thought Dave Edrych was going to win this because he basically put Aaron Ramsey, Gareth Bale in his team, but you've got very close. That'll be a hell of a 5-a-side game. Andy, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure everybody at Sgorio misses you, but it's been just the last few years, you've just raised the profile of the league, not just at Connah's Quay, it just lifted the league. We needed competition. You certainly gave us that. It's been a blast, and hopefully we'll see you very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.